Pokémon Sword and Shield have only been out for a few short months, but already there are things in the game whose presence doesn't seem all that new. If you've followed the franchise closely over the past couple years, you would know that a lot of cut content has been leaked in that time, and some of it has shown how sometimes new Pokémon, characters, and features that we see in one game were actually planned for another first. For instance, this occurred in Gold and Silver, where originally Mime Jr. and Tangrowth, amongst others, were planned to debut in Gold and Silver before they were cut, put on ice, and brought back 2 generations later in Sinnoh. That is the exact type of thing we are going to talk about today, but with Sword and Shield looking at content from the Gen 8 games that could have been planned for earlier titles initially. Before we get started, however, it is extremely important to note that much of this is just speculation. Some things we are going to discuss are pretty much facts, and I will say as such at those points, but a lot of this at the same time is just conjecture based on certain evidence and is essentially just a for fun analysis of how Sword and Shield might have borrowed from the leftover content of other generations. With all of that established though, let's go ahead and get into it. The one I want to begin with is also the one that inspired this video, and that is the idea of Galerian Cressola possibly being a lowland Cressola first and originally created for Sun and Moon. I really feel like this one could be legit, just based on the fact that we just barely entered into Gen 8 and are just barely removed from Generation 7, where we saw a Pokemon named Mareanie introduced, whose whole gimmick was that it ate and preyed upon Cressola. So what are the odds that in the very next generation, Cressola would also get a regional variant that's, of all things, a ghost type? I initially thought that Galerian Cressola was some type of reference to its regular form's relationship with Mareanie, but there isn't any nod to that in the games at all, which is why I started thinking more and more about the idea that a ghost type Cressola could have been prepared for Alola initially. I could very easily see it being one of the original regional variants that was pitched before it was decided that only Kanto Pokemon would be getting this treatment in the Sun and Moon games. The evidence just kind of fits together on this one and makes a lot of sense, which is why I suspect there might be more to Galerian Cressola's creation and debut in Galar than meets the eye. During the intro, I mentioned how some Pokemon that debuted in Sinnoh were actually planned for Johto, so why don't we talk about another pre-release Johto Pokemon that eventually became a Galar Pokemon, and that would be none other than Surfetch. While not exactly the same situation as the aforementioned Mime Jr. and Tangrowth, because Surfetch is a completely different Pokemon to what was originally planned for the Johto games, there was still a far-fetched evolution intended to be in Gold and Silver as of the creation of the Gold and Silver beta demo. Ironically, it was known as Madam and was a more feminine evolution of Farfetch'd compared to Surfetch'd being etymologically more masculine. Surfetch'd is actually a perfect fit in Galar thanks to the leaks in the UK, which is the stick that Farfetch'd is iconically known for, being way larger there than the ones in Japan, hence the ginormous leek sword that Surfetch'd carries along with it. So yeah, Surfetch'd does have a very British design that was created with Galar in mind, but it can still trace its roots back to the first attempt at a Farfetch'd evolution, and I have no doubt that Madam was unearthed and evaluated over a Game Freak when it came time to create the design for Surfetch'd for Sword and Shield. Since we have mentioned Mime Jr. a couple times already, why don't we talk about its new evolution in Sword and Shield, Mr. Rime. Now, full disclosure, this one is completely a hunch 100%, but for some reason I get this gut feeling that Mr. Rime as a Mr. Mime evolution has been trying to make its way into the games for some time now. It's not really that crazy of a thought to have, to be honest though, considering that Kanto Pokemon have got so much attention and love over the years, so it's practically guaranteed that such a quirky, noteworthy Pokemon like Mr. Mime would have at least been considered for an evolution at some point throughout the series' history. However, the real reason I bring this up is because more specifically, I feel like a Pokemon that eventually became Mr. Rime could have been in consideration for Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. I mean, think about it. The theme of the Sinnoh region is evolution, and tons of older Pokemon got evolutions here, and more particularly, lots of Kanto Pokemon got evolutions here. And not only did Kanto Pokemon get evolutions, but if you look at the Kanto Pokedex, many of the Pokemon in Mr. Mime's general section have already received evolutions. Pokemon like Scyther, Electabuzz, Magmar, Seadra, Rhydon, heck, even Pinsir got a Mega Evolution. And I know you could be thinking that Pokedex order is kind of a flimsy piece of evidence, but I mean, hey, it's something worth bringing up, especially because we also saw Mime Jr. debut in this generation. And I don't know about you, but I could definitely see Game Freak possibly giving Mr. Mime both a pre-evolution and an evolution in one go. It happened for Roselia with Badoo and Roserade in the same games, so it's entirely possible, and like I said, I just had a gut feeling about this one for whatever reason, so I wanted to go ahead and let you guys know what I thought of it. Another one that is more on the factual side, however, is Duralodon. While Duralodon in his final design incorporates UK elements like London's Shard skyscraper, its concept as a Pokemon was in consideration before the franchise had even officially begun. It's pretty easy to see, especially given its rivalry with Tyranitar, that Duraludon's origins lie in Mechagodzilla, and its aforementioned rivalry is a reference to the Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla film. A Pokemon based on Mechagodzilla, known as Omega, was also considered for Pokemon Red and Green, believe it or not, and was one of the Pokemon that was newly uncovered in the Red and Green beta leak. It's pretty easy to see here as well that Mechagodzilla is the inspiration, meaning that this guy waited over 23 years to make it into a Pokemon game before he gloriously emerged as Duraludon. The designs are different, which is naturally to be expected, but the core inspiration is still clearly shared between the two, and I'm sure some of the series' veterans like Shinichi Masuda, Tsunekazu Ishihara, and even Satoshi Tajiri himself looked back at Omega fondly as Duraludon's design was coming together. Another one where I just can't help but feel like something is going on has to do with Pinkerton and what, if any, connection it might have with Pyukumuku. I'm sure you've seen it yourself, but these Pokemon are extremely similar. They look a ton like each other, yet aren't related in any way, shape, or form that we can see. It just seems extremely odd to make two Pokemon look so much like one another if they aren't going to be related in some way. Sure, Pokemon can have similar or even the same inspirations as each other, but Game Freak are usually always careful to make sure that each Pokemon is its own when this happens. Pinkerton, in comparison to Pyukumuku, does have some things that differentiate it, but it's towing the line awfully heavily, more than we have ever usually seen before between two Pokemon, especially because once again, they have no relation to each other whatsoever. We even have the Gen 7 to Gen 8 dynamic occurring here as well that we mentioned with Corsola that makes it even more suspect. I could see Pinkerton possibly being one of the pitched designs for Pyukumuku that eventually became its own Pokemon for Sword and Shield due to the developers being fond of it or something like that. Completely speculative, yes, but if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck if you know what I mean. Moving away from the Pokemon for a sec, let's talk about a feature in Sword and Shield that was definitely cut from a prior game, the ability to transfer Pokemon to the game from Pokemon Go. This is something that can be achieved in Sword and Shield via Pokemon Home, but originally it was planned, or at least attempted, to be included in Pokemon Sun and Moon as well. There's data in the Gen 7 games that shows the intention for the games to have received some kind of gift from Pokemon Go at one time, likely Pokemon themselves. I talked about this in another video recently, but due to Pokemon Go and Sun and Moon releasing in the same year, and Pokemon Go blowing up more than anyone could have expected out of nowhere, it's likely they just ran out of time to make things work smoothly and couldn't get the feature out in time. The 3DS was also pushed to its limits with Sun and Moon, so anything that could have added stress to the system, like transferring data to and from a mobile game, game could have easily pushed it over the edge as well. Luckily enough though, with the success of Pokemon Go, this feature's inclusion was just a matter of time, and sure enough, it is a part of Sword and Shield after officially debuting for the first time in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Another long-awaited thing that saw its debut in Pokemon Sword and Shield was a Dark-type gym, and you guessed it, that was likely considered and cut from another game as well. Now, I literally just went over this last week in my Cut Gyms video, so I will try not to repeat myself too much, and by the way, make sure to check out that video if you haven't yet, but essentially there is evidence in the Gold and Silver beta demo that suggests that a Dark-type gym was originally going to be in the Johto games. One of the listed gym leaders in the data of the demo, who was also cut from the final game, is named Okera, a name which most likely comes from Shokera, the name of a demon-like yokai, hence the Dark type. The demo also does not include the Dark-type Elite Four member Karen, further adding to this possibility. So all in all, it was just cool in general to finally see a Dark-type gym happen in the 8th generation, but to know that the idea was most likely considered about 20 years prior and then shelved that entire time until it finally made a resurgence in Sword and Shield truly makes it just that much more awesome. And the last one we're going to talk about today is another swinging for the fences type of pick, but again, it's a fun one to think about. So one of Sword and Shield's most important Pokemon is Eternitus. It's super central to the plot, and it doesn't hurt either that it's a legendary Pokemon. However, Eternitus has some distinct similarities with another Pokemon, and it's yet another Pokemon from Generation 7. Regardless of how accurate or not I am with these theorizations, there is definitely a ton connecting the Pokemon of Generations 7 and 8, which is very interesting in and of itself. Anyway, the Pokemon I am referring to in this case is Naganadel. Both Eternitus and Naganadel are poison dragon types, and some of the only ones in existence. Secondly, they are both more or less legendary Pokemon, since Naganadel is an Ultra Beast, which aren't technically classified as legendary Pokemon, but they largely have the same status and are very important Pokemon in general. From a visual point of view, it's kind of funny because they do have completely different body types, but they also have this weird pointy quality to them, for lack of a better term, and just feel very similar in general, even though they do also look different in some respects. My personal idea here is that maybe, just maybe, the design for Eternitus emerged from some sort of beta design that was related to Naganadel. Maybe it was a beta design for Naganadel, or maybe it was a cut evolution, which would actually make a lot of sense considering Poipole is considered a starter Pokemon where it's from, yet it only evolves once into Naganadel, so maybe it was going to evolve twice originally like normal starters. And like I mentioned earlier, there's also that whole Gen 7 to Gen 8 thing going on again, which is very, very curious. Whatever the case may be though, it is interesting to see so many similarities between these seemingly unrelated Pokemon. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this little bit of speculation into the possible development history of Sword and Shield, and if you did, be sure to leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You should also subscribe if you're new for more Pokemon content all the time, and you can support the channel further if you would like by listening to my Pokemon remixes on Spotify, or checking out my Pokemon Cardinal project if you haven't yet. I even have a Pokemon podcast that I run every week over on another channel, and supporting that as well is huge for helping out the channel here too. Anyway, with that said, I'll be back with another one Thursday, so be sure to hit that notification bell, and until then, I love you all, and I will smell you guys later.